Hello, this is Marcus Krakowski, and I'll be talking about database retrieval systems. The difference between a heterogeneous DDBMS and a homogeneous DDBMS is while a heterogeneous DDBMS uses multiple different types of DBMS software like MySQL, SQL Server, or Oracle. A homogeneous DDBMS just uses one, like maybe SQL Server. An example could be an e-commerce or shopping website. You deploy a different DBMS for each part of a data storage process, like ordering or storing customer information, making use of a heterogeneous DBMS. To use a homogeneous DBMS, I will use a SQL Server to store all of my databases and tables, so I don't have to do any conversions between schemas or other configuration differences. The shared characteristics of all DDBMSs is the ability for data to be spread across multiple locations. This can be called sharding, where data can be stored wherever and still all be part of the collected data. An example could be I have a list of customers that are on separate tables and separate databases at different locations, but I can still see them as part of the whole data set. Companies that would use distributed databases are companies in tech like Facebook, X, Google, and Amazon. One such example I found was Facebook's use of Apache Cassandra, which is a NoSQL distributed database that is also used by Netflix, eBay, and Uber. Amazon also uses SimpleDB, another distributed database, for their AWS architecture. Here I've laid out the most important factors of a DDBMS, in my opinion, which would be having high availability and good data resilience, being able to access your data whenever you want and having confidence in safekeeping is the basic needs of a distributed database strategy, in my opinion. Data consistency is also more important to me than latency, but high latency is also an issue. And having high availability requires efficient routing of data traffic. Some organizations have a heterogeneous DDBMS so that they can use the coding language that they want to use, and that could be different than what is in the distributed database. Another reason may be because they already have some services running on one distributed database, and they may require an existing database from another company or third party. Here is a good example of a heterogeneous DBMS, which is data warehousing, which is used for analytics and reporting. And being able to bridge data between different systems to make reports is much more efficient than converting all of your systems over to the same databases. These rules for distributed databases 9 through 12. In my experience, it is difficult to create a distributed database that can run on any hardware, operating system, network, or database vendor. The hardware and operating systems require entirely different installation files that need to be compiled and need to target the correct systems. Networks have a varying degree of capabilities and security tightness that could affect latency or speed and access entirely in some cases. One example would be Z-scaling, which is a security measure that can severely limit a distributed database's abilities if not set up correctly. Database vendors all have their own needs and usually their own specific setup. In my experience, Macs have different hardware and network security and operating systems than Windows machines, and that can affect distributed databases and their install files and their performance. You don't find any DDBMSs that follow all 12 rules entirely, but I can safely assume that most DDBMSs try to use those rules as a guideline to help them make better DDBMSs. Couldn't find anything that specifically said if any DDBMS has ever followed all 12 rules completely. I think it's safe to assume that most good DDBMSs have chosen to follow the rules as more of a guideline to help make their DDBMSs better. And I'm sure they follow them closely as possible without them sacrificing any functionality or sacrificing the quality of their systems. A few examples of open source DDBMSs are MySQL, SQL Server, SQLite, Apache Cassandra, and MongoDB. Apache Cassandra is used by Facebook most famously, and some of its features include being able to scale up as more machines are added and being able to replicate all nodes of data for a high fault tolerance. A few general uses that are popular for Cassandra are e-commerce, inventory management, and logistics products. And they leverage Cassandra's scalability and high fault tolerance nicely. And that was my presentation on database systems. And my reference that I use to get some of the data was fauna.com.